Yeah. So now the theoretical part again I'm going to discuss for always energy. What are the components and how we need to design and what are the things we have to know. So the thing is like as I mentioned, always on is a new high availability disaster feature in SQL Server 2012. Initially, when the implemented or released the feature, what they call like a harden. So initially, always energy, what they call harden, HADRON. What is that means like high availability, like what I have to go for. Things. Initially, what they mentioned, HADRON. What is that means? What is that means like high availability, high H, caps lock on H, high availability, high availability, disaster recovery, disaster recovery, always, always on. So HADR means like a high availability, disaster recovery, always on. So they name like a HADRON in the initially. So the thing is like if you observed in the always availability group, okay, in the like I discussed one concept, right, like log file full. So in the log file full, if you go for like a dbcc esql prf log space, log space, so we can see the log space utilization are waiting for the HADORN as some keyword, right? And also we can see the wait type HADR1. So that means the database are configured always an availability group, and the data is moving from one database to another database. So in the backend, if you the recent like they moved like they introduced concept like always energy also in the backend code while moving the data like the log buffers, we can see like a HADORN, and the wait type also sometimes we can see HADORN. So that means the database are configured in the always availability data is synchronizing. So suppose if log file is full and if you see the wait type called like HADORN, that means the database are configured in the always energy, and that always is not working as expected because of that log file is full. Okay, so that time when the log file is full, right? I did not explain the if the log file is full because of availability, how to resolve those things I can discuss here. Okay, so now the thing is like always an availability disaster recovery feature in SQL Server 2012. They introduced initially they named as a HADRON. That means high availability disaster recovery always on. So here the always on AZ in the backend, how they using and how they what they configured means like in the there are two base concepts. Okay, one is for the clustering and another one is for the mirroring. So always energy in the Microsoft in the backend, they are using a two key concepts. One is clustering and another one is mirroring. So don't confuse it. If the using means clustering, mirroring means we are not going to configure the clustering, we are not going to configure the mirroring. But the functionality of the concept they taken from the clustering and mirroring. So that is the reason in the always and availability group in the backend, it is using clustering and mirroring. So the clustering is for the failouring the availability groups from one node to another node. So the mirroring is for the maintaining the copies from one node to another node. Okay, they have taken the core component implementation from the clustering and mirroring. But we are not implementing clustering and mirroring, but in the backend technology, it will use. So that means always and use cluster technology for failover and also mirroring in keeping the multiple mirrored copies of the database. This is the always on availability backend technology it is using. So mm, let me go for one more. Yeah, let me go for. So in the mirroring, what will happen if we want to fail over the database means we have to go for single database failover. But in the always on AG, we can fail over the multiple database in the at a time, but all the database should be keep in the one container. Okay. So if you observe in the mirroring, if you want to, I want to fail over, like I have 10 databases. 10 databases are configured in the mirroring. If I want to fail over from one computer to another computer. So that scenario, what you need to do? You have to fail over the database one by one. Okay, there is no way to fail over the all the database one time. But in the always and availability groups, what we are going to do, we can fail over multiple database in the single shot. But if you want to fail over all the database one time, that means that all the database should be containing in the one group. Then only if you fail over that particular group, that group what will do? It will take all the database from one server to another server. So think like this is the container. So this is the container. In that we have a 10 databases added. So if I fail over this container to here, if I fail over to this container to here. So while moving this container, what will happen? What are the resource we have? That will move to here also. So it will take care. So that is the reason. That is the reason we have to keep the databases to the one group. Okay. That group like a container and that group like a availability group name. So in the mirroring, so always an availability group, multiple databases we can fail over in the single shot. But the thing is like all the databases should be one container. That container we can call like a availability group name. So if you fail over the one group, that group will take care what are the database we have, and it fail over to here. Suppose if you forgot to add one database, if you forgot to add one database, if you forget to add one or multiple databases, okay, to this container. If you fail over to here, then what will happen? What are the database aligned or grouped to this container? Those will be moved here. Remaining, it won't move. Okay. So it's kind of like instance, high availability, disaster recovery. But the thing is like we need to want to maintain the all the availability databases. That means we have to keep those database to one container. If you want to keep it, or else we can to leave it. But if you want to maintain the availability, that means we have to add the database to the one container. So the thing is like here, do you need to maintain one availability group or multiple availability group? Okay. So that thing we can discuss. That is up to our requirement. Okay. So that is our up to our requirement. Like do I need to maintain one availability group or multiple availability group? Okay. So we can discuss now, like our upcoming sessions. The thing is like now, what is the availability group? Availability group is nothing but a container. It will hold the databases which we added. Okay. That is the availability group. Definition of the availability group. What is the availability group means? Availability group is the container that holds the database. And also availability group, we need to add the listener as well. Okay. So in the availability group, we are going to add secondary servers and as well as the databases. Okay. Then we can add the listener as well. It is correct. 1 minute. Let me check it. Yes. The availability group is a container used to group of databases uh, that are used for automatic failover one node to another node. Okay. So here the thing is like the same concept, how the data is transferring. So in the alias and availability groups are using for failover one node to another node, that is using from the clustering. Failover using from the clustering. Clustering. So the concept of the copying the databases, copying the databases, copying the databases. It will use concept of the mirroring. It will use the concept of the will use the concept of the it will use the concept of the mirroring. So in the mirroring, what are the modes we have? We have the modes are the mirroring. What we have the modes? What are the modes we have? What are the modes we have? We have two modes. We have two modes. Synchronous SHRONUS synchronous mode, asynchronous mode. Okay. So in the always and as I mentioned, it will use for clustering to fail over the availability group one node to another node, and copying the database, it will use mirroring. If you're using mirroring, how the data is committing, how the data is transferring, synchronous mode, asynchronous mode. Okay. So I'm not going to discuss about the synchronous and asynchronous. We already discussed it in the mirroring, right? So just refer the mirroring, synchronous and asynchronous. But the thing is like in the availability group is very important for synchronous and asynchronous, and based upon the clustering. Okay, based upon the Windows clustering, this synchronous mode will available. Why? Because in the mirroring, we can maintain the one copy to the one server, but always on AZ, we can maintain the multiple copies to the multiple servers. So copying the multiple servers and maintaining the multiple servers depends on the Windows cluster. Okay. So here, what I meant to say, we can have one primary up to, yeah. So initially it having a four node or four replicas. Later it is going in, extend to eight copies, means eight replicas. So if you go on to maintain the four copies, that means we required four SQL Server instance. So that instance we can call like a replicas. Okay. So in that replicas, do I need to keep all the replicas synchronous mode, or do you need to keep all the asynchronous mode? So that also we have a limitations. So and also if you going for the latest Windows cluster 2016 or 2019, we can maintain the replicas. Replicas means like a SQL servers or VM. We can maintain up to 8 nodes. So that means in the Windows cluster, we can add the 8 computers, and we can maintain the 8 copies of the one database. In that 8 database, do we need to keep? It will allow all the copies to synchronous mode and all the copies to go for asynchronous mode. No, we have some limitations. So what is the synchronous and what is the asynchronous? Just read from the mirroring. So interview ask, they will ask, how many synchronous we will have, how many asynchronous we will have, and how many nodes we will have, and we can add. Let me Google it. This is an important concept. I don't want to give miss numbers. In SQL Server 2012 and SQL Server 2014. How many nodes or replica we can add in that? How many on that? How many we can keep as a sync and async mode? Can I get numbers? So you can use the Copilot for the actual documentation that will provide. It's kind of like a great AI tool. Yeah. So SQL Server 2012, 2014, you can configure up to 5 replicas for availability group. So primary 1 and 4 secondaries. So that means we can have the 5 computers in that one primary SQL Server instance, remaining 4 secondaries. That means one database we have 4 copies, and the SQL Server 2012 and 2014 out of this. So out of 4 copies. So here, so here 1, 2, 3, 4, one database, one database. So, so we can call like these are instance or VM. Okay, that should be replicas. These are the replicas. One copy. We can contain one more copy. We can contain one more copy. We can maintain one more copy. So here, do we require all the copies? That means that is depends upon the our requirement. You can go for one copy. If you want to go for 2 copies, we can go for 3 copies. If you want to go for 4 copies. But these 4 copies from 1 to 4 copies limitation from the 2012 and 2014 SQL Server. So then out of this, including the primary, one be synchronous mode. So here synchronous mode, what they mentioned, let me go for one primary and one secondary, max synchronous, synchronous 1 minute, 1 plus 5 4 secondaries. Okay, to one primary, one secondary, total. Okay, so here one is sync mode, remaining async mode. Async mode. Asynchronous mode. So in the 2012 and 2014, one database always data will be real time. Like commit will be happen here, back will come to the acknowledge. Both will be fully synchronized. But remaining 3 will be depends upon the network, depends upon the server load. Data will be varying. It's a asynchronous means like right. It is not waiting for any commitment. Data will be moving. And the thing is like you can see here data, we can see kind of like a data loss. Synchronous mode, there is no data loss. Asynchronous, we can see some data loss. So here out of 4 replicas, one will be synchronous, remaining asynchronous. That is from the 2012 and 2014. So here synchronous supporting automatic failover, asynchronous we have to go for manual failover. So the synchronous, if we keep the thing is like if something goes wrong, it will fail over to hit this node. It won't go to the here. Why? Because synchronous mode, the failover will happen to the that respect to replica, not for the asynchronous. The synchronous we have a automatic failover. If we keep the synchronous mode, uh, automatic failover will happen to the this particular replica. Asynchronous mode, we have to go for manual failover. That is one thing. And one more thing I need to tell. As I mentioned, if you going for geo cluster replica, okay, geo cluster always an easy. So that time always go for asynchronous mode. Why? Because we are going to keep the multi subnet and we are going to keep the different region because there will be network loss. If you keep synchronous mode, our primary server will be some data loss. So that is the reason geo cluster always go for asynchronous mode. From the let me go for from the 2016 onwards, what are the numbers we have? Yeah. So from the, as I mentioned, from the 2016 onwards, we have a total 9 replicas, including one primary and remaining 8 nodes. So here, from the 2016 onwards, we have one more 4 replicas here. Okay, 4 replicas and one primary. Let me go for, anyway, I'm not going here. So in that, out of this, 3 will be synchronous and remaining can be asynchronous commit mode. So here out of this 8, 3 can be only for synchronous mode. Remaining 5 we have to keep asynchronous mode. So the business generally like we won't go for 8 nodes or 4 nodes. Why? Because unnecessarily cost, right? Simply maintaining the copies, we need to maintain the virtual computers and disk. Okay, so that is the reason generally in the each and every environment they generally we have go like 2 node cluster or 3 node cluster, not more than that. Okay, so this is the kind of like a interview will ask. This definitely they will ask in the 2012 and 2014 how many nodes and how many replicas will you have, and what are the uh, synchronous modes and asynchronous mode. Okay, and what are the maximum numbers? So in the 2016, we can go for up to 8, including primary, we have a 9. In that, maximum, we can keep 3 sync. If you want to keep asynchronous, but at least one will be sync, remaining, we can keep 7 as a async, or else maybe we can keep 3 sync, remaining 5 async. So that thing, they will ask the interview question perspective. Okay. So let me stop the recording and I will go for one more recording from here only, so that it is easy for me to upload and reading as well. Let me stop it.